Hi, welcome to Justin in the Woods. I'm Justin, and today we're going to be going over ferro rods. Alright, so ferro rods. There's all different types, sizes. You have this one's a real common one here. About this size. Now here's an Exotac model. Just unscrew that. Unscrew your striker. That'll give you a little bit more of a handhold, to strike this one. You even have, this more knife here. It actually comes with a small ferro rod. It comes out on the back of this. You even have a small one on this little whistle here. Even your lighters. We call it flint, but it's really just a small ferro rod that's inside your lighters here. And then of course, this is a larger one. And this is what I really want to talk about. When you're going to purchase your first ferro rod, you're going to find a lot of these smaller ones at your stores locally, at your sporting goods stores. Sometimes they'll have them in Walmarts and things of that nature. They're cheap, they're readily available, and you might be tempted to pick one up, and it's not a bad idea. This one is my backup. Do yourself a favor. Spend just a little bit of money. They're not super expensive, Spend just a little bit of money and actually get a large ferro rod. It's going to save you so much hassle down the road. When you're starting to learn how to use one, it's going to be a lot more forgiving. You're just going to get a lot more out of it. Most people in the bushcraft community would agree that you would want a ferro rod that's 6 inches long by a ½ inch in diameter. And I definitely agree with that. They advertise that this particular rod will give you over 20,000 strikes. Your big lighter, they advertise that you're only going to get around 3,000 strikes out of that. These smaller ones, the smaller they get, the less life that they have in them. And I've done a little bit of math, on these larger ferro rods here. And it does depend on the conditions, but even using an above average amount of strikes to get a fire going with something like this, in theory, you could build a fire every single day for over 5 years using a rod like this. But if you get a large ferro rod to start off with, it'll last a lifetime. You probably won't go through one considering how much it would be used. So that is kind of a tip number one. Do yourself a favor, go out and buy a large ferro rod, 6 inches by a ½ inch in diameter. Doesn't really matter where you get it from, and you won't regret it. If you start out with these smaller ones here, they're gonna work, but you're going to be fighting yourself. You'll probably end up being disappointed. You'll probably get frustrated. It's better to start on something like this that you can really grab and get a hold of, that's going to give you a long time. It's going to let you be able to practice. These are great for backups, having these smaller rods, and I would recommend having a backup as well, just in case. This is going to be it. This is what you're going to be using most of the time. In this little series that we're doing here, it's aimed more to the beginners, the people that don't have any supplies and is looking to go out and buy them and build their kit up. Well, we're going to start talking about, a little bit later, going into conserving resources, whether you should use one thing in a particular situation. But like I mentioned before, this rod will last 20,000 strikes. This big lighter will only last 3,000. And you got your fuel that you have to worry about too. If it's possible to get a fire started with this rod and conserve your big lighter for something that might be a little bit more of an emergency, where you need that open flame to get a fire going, it's better to use a little bit of this resource and conserve your other resource. Like I said, that's not exactly what this video is covering, but I want you to start getting in that type of mindset. So get you a big ferro rod. Most of them come with a scraper. Um, that's also why it's important for your knife, and we're going to go over this maybe in another series. It's important for your knife to have a 90-degree spine on it. The way you can use your knife to scrape the rod. You need 3 things to get a fire started. You need heat, you need the fuel, and you need the oxygen. Now, I don't know the exact sciences and whatnot of how it works, but essentially, as you scrape the ferro rod, the friction is creating the heat. The particles, those bits of metal that are flaking off of it, create the fuel, and then when that combination exposed to the oxygen allows it to spark. A ferro rod is going to give you what would be considered a high temperature spark. We've been covering a lot of things that are in the area of low temperature sparks. You know, a ferrocerium rod will burn in excess of 5,000 degrees. So it's a lot hotter, it's a lot more forgiving as far as your tender material in order to ignite it. In this series so far, we've just been going over, you know, some of the different tools that you could go out and buy or that you could use if you could find it around your home, just to give you ideas of what's out there and what you could be putting in your kit. I haven't really gotten down to the mentality of what you absolutely need to have and parameters that you should be covering. I didn't really want to make this video about that, but this is just more stuff for you to go on ahead and start thinking about, you know, when you're building your kit. And especially where you're not carrying every single thing with you. You know, you could supplement things, you know, if you have to, you know, and have more or less stuff depending on the type of trip that you're going on. A good rule of thumb is you need 3 ways to have combustion for your fire. You need to have 3 options. And this is my opinion, and you could go and do your own research, you know, and watch videos from other people that are in this community that's been doing it a lot longer than I've been doing. Out of those 3 options, it's going to be a lighter, and it's going to be a ferrocerium rod. So that's already your 2 out of 3. When we get later into this and showing more techniques and more items that you could have, you know, just put more tools in the toolbox, giving you things to think about, giving you options, and seeing what works for you, your budget, your environment, what you're exactly trying to accomplish, you know, for your outdoor recreational or survival needs. You know, if it's just, you know, everyday carry type of thing, you know, I'm just going back and forth, you know, kind of more in a city environment, you know, not really looking to get in too much trouble or be outdoors for an extended period of time. Pull it out of my pocket here. I carry a lighter. This is a little mini Bic lighter. We've shown, you know, how to set these up, you know, in previous videos. You know, it has a little bit of duct tape and a little bit of jute twine for tinder. This is what I have in my pocket right now. So it's going to be a lighter. You're definitely going to need a lighter. And what I'm saying is you're definitely going to need a ferro rod. They don't care about the wind. They don't care about the fuel running out. They work when they're wet. In any condition, you'll get very, very hot sparks off of this. All right, now we got that on fire. Just add just a little bit of these thicker shavings there. Ooh, almost got me. And you can just keep building on that. That's just to kind of show, you know, there was a branch that I took out of the yard and snapped, processed down just a little bit. You know, you get them little fine fibers, then you could really start getting something going. We're going to put, was going to put him out, and he started flaming back up on me. We'll just let him do what he's going to do. We're just going to light a couple different materials and kind of show some of it. But that's one way to do it. You know, doing it like that. And this goes back into, I'm going to put that out. That goes back into what I was talking about having a larger rod. With a shorter rod, you really can't do that. Maybe when you're starting out, to actually anchor in and then make your long strokes. See, a lot of times, the problem that you get into is that people are wanting to do this number. And say you have everything built and everything's ready to go, then you're cracking it, and now you're just blowing all your tinder everywhere. You know, you keep on hitting it. That's not the way you want to do it. Starting off, you could start by anchoring. See, that's all that takes. Real simple. Oh boy, he's still on fire. What you want to get used to doing is holding your actual striker, whether it be a striker or your back of your knife, holding that steady and pulling the rod away. We'll see if we can get this lit doing that method. That's all we needed. That's going to keep you from bumping your tender and keep it from flying everywhere and messing you up. Anchor and scrape along the rod, or you anchor your striker and pull away and shoot those sparks down into your tender source. You've probably seen, in an earlier video, of us using char cloth to take low temperature spark. If we can take a low temperature, it'll definitely take one of these high temperature sparks, and we could just let that go, and that will start to smolder, and then we could easily put that into a tinder bundle or a bird's nest and get that going, by blowing that into flame. I'm gonna stamp that out. So even if you're using char cloth, that thing is still on, it's still burning. So even if you're using char cloth, you could save your flint and steel, or you could save, your lighter for sparking. It'd be a lot easier, to actually use your rod to ignite that type of source. Kind of along the same things we did earlier with them shavings. You get a little bit of fat wood here. I have some of these fat wood curls, and we'll put just some of these small fat wood shavings on that. And this stuff should ignite very easily. There we go. And honestly, I was just going overkill with that. That wasn't very necessary to strike that many times. As you can see, it really doesn't take much to get it going. Once you get a little bit of the technique down, if you get a big rod, like I've been saying, it's going to be a lot more forgiving on you. You're not going to get your knuckles scraped up as much. You're going to have more material to work with. It's just going to put out more spark and increase your odds of hitting what you need to hit and getting stubborn tinder to light. That's really all there is to it. I'm not an expert on it. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I do have a little bit of knowledge, and I'm passing down what I know to you guys. And that way you could make an educated decision on how to outfit yourself. You definitely want to get a ferro rod. It's very enjoyable to use. They work in any weather condition. They last for so long. It's a very versatile piece of kit, and it's something that you definitely need to include if you think that you're going to be spending any amount of time in the woods. As always, I appreciate you watching and everyone's support. I'm going to be trying to get some more videos rolled out here to you real soon. As always, I'll catch you out in the woods.